the cohesive team is brought together by character and fit rather than qualifications. Well, in my case, it wasn't hard to stay motivated. I woke up with a massive adrenaline jolt every morning because it was existential. I mean, we'd taken on 250 endangered animals with no prior experience of running a zoo. And my family lived there. That was my family home. I had two small children, aged 3 and 5. And so I just, I felt it was a mission to fight to save these animals, because in our situation, we knew that if the zoo wasn't a success, all of them would have been euthanized because they had no conservation value. The previous owner had bred a lot of the animals kind of interrelated, and although they looked lovely and they didn't know they were, of no conservation value. There were sort of 7 tigers here, but no other zoo would take them. So the zoo had to work, and if it didn't, I was going to be home. The 250 animals dead, and I was going to be homeless. So it's like getting up in the morning, right? Okay, what do we do now? And there was no doubt at all about what the motivation was. But I definitely had to have a problem-solving mindset of what's the sensible bite point here. And if I couldn't overcome a particular obstacle, instead of getting too absorbed in it, I knew there were many others. And there are lots of ways to make progress. And by the time you finish doing something, come back and the situation may have changed somewhere else. And so I was just in a loop of hyperactivity. And motivation wasn't a thing. But the children were a huge thing for me, because obviously my wife died within a few months of us arriving here. And suddenly being a single parent presented with 2 small children, that's where you start. And, all of that kept attention, dressing, washing, going to school, and making sure they're fed and all that. And then you think, okay, what can the zoo throw at me? How can I keep it going? I'd been a journalist before for 15 years, and I'd never employed anybody. I was a freelance. I had my own hours. I worked mostly nocturnally. I'd take calls on the phone when I chose, and suddenly I'm in meetings at 8 o'clock in the morning, just before the school run, organising reluctant people who didn't get on with each other, and we had to employ new qualified keepers to sort of get us through regaining our license. And of course, then there's the old guard of the people who lived here and related to the previous owner, who've always done it in a particular way, and they were valuable because they knew how the place worked, but they were dinosaurs as far as the other guys are concerned. So I was sort of like the common enemy of both of them. I was the evil man who, maybe I had designs on monetizing the animals. This was a big thing at the time, because I've always been interested in animal sentience and animal psychology and animal rights. And I was writing a book to promote animal rights while I was in France. And suddenly I noticed that the animal rights people, of whom there's a powerful lobby, are against zoos. Even though they do conservation work, and now currently we're breeding critically endangered amur leopards for reintroduction into the environment. And you need a zoo to do that. And but suddenly I was basically everybody's enemy. I said, okay, fine. I'm just trying to do the right thing here. And I just had to work out. Everybody was there for a reason in terms of staff. Everybody had something to contribute. And I just had to highlight that all the time. And, some people have weaknesses, and just don't focus on that. Bring out the strengths, bring out the contribution, trying to make everybody involved. But we all had this shared mission. We knew that we had to get our zoo license back, which involved raising standards, which were there, and focusing in on the animal care is always a common denominator. So it's animal first. Then I thought staff well-being is the next thing, and then you can think about visitor appeal and that sort of thing. So yeah, it was a bit of a baptism of fire, and a lot of juggling, but juggling fire, I guess. But yeah, it was all about communication, which, being a journalist, was I was used to that. I was used to sifting opinions, working out where the common ground was, and that's usually your article. But in this case, it was just the course of action. Yeah, there was a lot of pressure. That was so hard because they didn't like each other. In the early days, that was the thing I noticed. And we had these guys we'd inherited, 6 people who were real mavericks. And then we had these maybe increasing numbers of qualified people who come from other zoos that knew how they worked. Some of them very, very well qualified. And I had to kind of, as I say, bring all of their strengths into play, and remind them the whole time, we're in this together for the animals. And, start with the animals, start with something common that everybody can unite with, and then work out from there. And just keep reminding them. And I noticed it was often a thing people would cite, it's an animal welfare issue. If they wanted to get out doing something, or there was that was kind of like the go-to mantra, and you had to unpack it a lot. I remember someone, he wanted to go to the electrical flyers, and I said, why, we need you to be doing something else. He said, no, it's an animal welfare issue. And I thought, okay, is it? Is it though? What exactly? Are you lighting, heating? And it turned out he was going to get something for a Game Boy. And it's like, that's not an animal welfare issue. Come back, get back to work. But, and again, it was just learning the ropes. And they tested me like you wouldn't believe, all the time. And it was my wife was here. She was here for 3 months. And she was a graphic designer. She designed our logo. And they were so nice to her. She cleared a space in the office, and she started her thing. Designers are kind of very meticulous. They got all their little things out, little paintings she was doing, and scanning, and just busily working. And they'd be bringing her cups of tea and asking if they could. Like with me, it'd be like, we've got that. I'd have to come out and solve a problem I knew they knew how to do, just to see if I could do it. I just didn't have this. I didn't have that vibe. But yeah, it was. The other thing I found that really interesting, very important, was positive and negative people. And people, they're not all the same. And you inherit people, you employ people that are good at CV and qualification, and then it doesn't work. And I noticed there was a Tim Smith, who founded the Eden Project. I was very interested in him because that was a huge influence on one of the reasons we thought this might be possible, because that was fairly newly established in Cornwall. And he conjured this image of this, he had this vision of the Eden Project, and there was just a ditch there. And he made it happen out of just a sheer force of will. And so I was interested in him, and I listened to interviews with him, and he said, for his guys, to try to make everybody cohesive, he had a book club, and as one of the many things. And then so they all had this book club, and they all read the book, and they all had a chat. That's not going to work. We're not going to do a book club. But then he was asked about negative people. So what do you do about negative people? And he said, get rid of them. That's it. But one poisonous negative person poisons everybody within a month. Get them. And he stopped being all Mr. Nice Guy. It's like, no, don't have that. And I noticed this was really a thing. We had a few people who there was absolutely no pleasing, no matter what you did, any problem, any new thing. And gradually created an environment where they left of their own accord. And you can't sack someone for being miserable, but they go and find somewhere else to be miserable. And now I've always had this conscious policy of employing nice people. And, you get the final three in the interview. They've all got qualifications of some kind and experience, but are they nice people? And are they smiley, friendly, imaginative, resilient? And that's so important. Any negativity, I've had it right up to here with negativity, and I've got a really fine-tuned sense of it. Like, you didn't take that very well. I'm watching. But I don't say anything. I just think that. But it's definitely the cohesive team is brought together by character and fit rather than qualifications. Well, I've been doing this a long time now, and I noticed that my audiences do take a lot away in terms of, it's quite a roller coaster. It's a story of overcoming lots of obstacles, and some of which are apparently insurmountable. And there's tragedy, of course, of the death of my wife in the middle of it all. And often people come up to me, people cry sometimes. Not saying it's all bad. People laugh a lot. I have to. If I haven't made them laugh 10 times, I get worried. But people come and there's always a queue to people want to talk to me and shake hands and exchange details and things. And they always say it puts their problems in perspective, because it's almost unimaginable scenario. Nobody buys a zoo and goes through this amount of tragedy and then has a Hollywood movie made about them, and then that isn't even the end, because that's when stuff, HMRC are still coming in, and the rain, and and there are all these animals. When you've got animals at stake, it changes the state for everything, and people do come and say it's made them look at their problems in a different way. Of like, I thought I had problems, but the things I've got now, I can just go around them or over them or through them, or just wait until that's, like I was doing with the zoo mainly, often just taking little bites out of all the different problems. By the time you come back to the first one, it's changed. And it's that adaptive mindset, problem-solving mindset, and keeping calm and using what's available. And in my case, pretty well the only thing that was available was nature. Go outside and breathe and know that you're doing the right thing for the right reasons. And at the end of the day, we didn't have a television by choice, and but we did have tigers that were hand-reared that would lick the kids' hands through the fence, and that's amazing. You take your kids, they got holes in their shoes because you don't want money for that, but they're like, can we go see Vlad? Can we go see Vlad? And Vlad is a 200-kilogram Siberian tiger who fucks at you and lick your hand, and of course his tongue is bigger than your hand, and it's like sandpaper. And I remember we were many times we had to struggle with the banks in the just after the recession in particular in 2008-9, and the bank came up to foreclose on their overdraft, and I thought that's the end if they do that. So come and see what we're about. And they were all quite busy. I said, come on, and get right up against the fence with Vlad, and Vlad comes over and licks the hand, and they're like, whoa, this is very okay. Yeah, I see. I'll give you another 6 months. This is the best. Yeah, thanks, done that. And of course, not every company can think, okay, well, I'll just get the title and lick the bank manager. But you've got to think sideways about what your priorities are, what your core mission is, and how you can possibly overcome the obstacles, and why you're doing it in the first place. And people come away and say, wow, it's made them think about all of those things.